Innovators Corner. This will be our final presentation of the day, and I'd like to thank you all for attending. And just a reminder again that tomorrow there will be new displays of technology here for you to observe, so please come back and see the new technology. The last presentation is going to be on technology transfer and partnering, so for all the industry people, if you're looking at partnering with Army Labs or Ardex, please talk to our people here, and we're happy to have Dr. David Humphreys from he's the licensing officer for medical technology at MRMC, and welcome.
All right. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Dave Humphrey. I'm here from the United States Army Medical Research and Material Command in Fort Detrick. Just a quick show of hands. Is anyone here looking for technologies? Anyone? Yes. Okay. Anybody here looking for partnering opportunities? Yep. Okay, great. And is there anyone here that might be looking for funding for any technologies? Okay, great. Thank you very much. So let me start off by just providing a brief definition. Oh, here is the disclaimer. A brief definition of what is technology transfer. Technology transfer is the exchange of knowledge and materials between parties. And so when we talk about tech transfer, we are talking about transferring of Army technologies, Army medical technologies out to industry. Some of our partners include universities, companies, nonprofits, foundations, local, state, and foreign governments as well. So these organizations, why would they partner with us? I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But oftentimes our interests are aligned in trying to generate a solution, a medical solution to a problem that each is experiencing. I mentioned we license technologies out. The U.S. Army has medical research laboratories around the United States and around the world. And here's just a graphical representation of some of the research labs. I also have a sheet on our booth that actually has some of the contact information for the tech transfer offices that are at those research labs. So all of these labs are doing research toward finding medical solutions to problems that the Army is in need of finding a solution for. So as they do this research, as you can imagine, there are new inventions that come out of the research. And so what we do is we take those inventions, and here you see the light bulb. Everyone kind of thinks of a light bulb when they think of an invention. It's usually you have an idea, right? But we also like to think of it more as an ecosystem where the inventions are just part of the process. So an invention may be at a very early stage, and in order for us to get to an actual solution, it needs some growth, it needs some development, as represented by the tree. And two of the major mechanisms that we use, we will license these technologies out to partners. We will also use cooperative research and development agreements, also known as CRADAs. And these are effective ways of getting the technologies to partners. And it's not that we just license the technology and are done with it. The Army still is involved, especially on the CRADA side, with doing cooperative research. So what does the Tech Transfer Office do? We look at the portfolio and research capabilities of the Army in terms of the medical labs and clinical facilities. We try to license the inventions to industry and academia. But our main goal, of course, for the licensing is to get these made into products. So unlike our counterparts in other tech transfer offices like universities, we are not really trying to make money off these inventions. We want these inventions to be developed into products that we can use, hopefully. And any money that we do get from a license agreement, we share with the inventors, and that is by statute. So the inventors get a share. Also, some of the revenue will go back to the research laboratories for them to do additional research. And then I'll talk about another use of some of the income on the next slide. So rather than sort of traditional technology transfer, we like to think that we are doing what's known as assistive technology transfer. And I think that's a lot more than just licensing. We get these technologies at various stages, and we want to try to de-risk them if we can. And one example of how we might do that is, say we get a new medical device technology. Well, at USAMDA, they have the capability for doing prototypes. So we might do a prototype of that medical device and kind of see what it looks like. Then we may go back and see, does this need to be refined? Could we make additional improvements? And so that by the time we get to a licensing point, we're maybe on our third or fourth version. We have CAD drawings that we can offer as part of the license, and hopefully have increased the chances of getting a product developed that the Army can use. The other thing you might wonder is why would companies want to partner with the Army? Oftentimes these technologies have dual use, so it's not just for military. There are civilian uses and civilian markets as well. So that provides an incentive for them to work with us. The other thing I briefly alluded to after prototyping was test and evaluation. So we have folks at the Army who would be possibly end users of these technologies, and they are able to give critical feedback on how these technologies could be improved or whether or not they're even useful. Other technologies that we get are in the vaccine space. Very fortunate to have researchers who are working on some critical vaccines, such as for the Zika virus. And once an early stage vaccine candidate starts to make its way in terms of its technology readiness level, it will get handed off to the advanced development team. And the advanced development team at USAMDA has extensive clinical and regulatory experience. Again, this is expertise that most tech transfer offices do not have. So for a company to be able to get FDA advice or clinical regulatory guidance, they would have to hire maybe an expensive consultant. But the Army has in-house clinical regulatory expertise. So I mentioned licensing and CRADAs and R&D. And we also have this very diagram is on the flip side of the contact information that it's at our booth. One example that I'd like to present is the Japanese encephalitis vaccine. And as you can see, the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research was working on this vaccine back in 1995. They entered into a cooperative research and development agreement. So probably the earlier stage, but as this progressed, and you can see that it took all the way till 2009, so 14 years to make it through this process. You can see there are various partners that have been involved that have played various roles to get this product approved by the FDA. So for us in the tech transfer office, as well as for the medical command, this is a good example of a win, because there is a product developed that's available on the market, not just for us, but for civilians as well. I'd like to highlight just an example of how we look at technology. So one issue that you could imagine, this is a problem in the civilian population as well, is that a lot of accidents are caused by people being drowsy. Maybe they were up late last night, or they have small kids, or for whatever reason, they are tired. And I believe the stats from 2014 said there were 72,000 crashes that were a result of drowsy or sleepiness from the drivers. And as you can imagine, this is also a problem for soldiers who are on patrol or who are on duty, maybe also get sleepy. So how do you monitor that? The Army has a technology called the Alert Cap, which continuously monitors brain waves. And the take home from this slide is that you can see on the far side the awake state. Your high frequency brain waves are at greater amplitude than your low frequency brain waves. But as you become sleepy, that starts to shift. So the neutral state, you can see that these brain waves, the amplitudes of the brain waves are roughly the same. And so this cap will create a buzz notification. So this is before you're even drowsy. It will tell you you are starting to become tired. So before you yawn, before you start to suffer cognitive impairment due to being sleepy, this cap will alert you, hence the name. And so we are looking for partners for this particular technology. So lastly, I'd like to close with this diagram. And most people who are in startup companies or technology development probably recognize this, the so-called valley of death. And what this is technologies start off, and they usually have some source of funding. Could be grant funding, but as they start to progress, sometimes they don't progress at the rate at which the funders or the money would allow. So you reach what's called the valley of death, where if there is no more funding, you cannot advance the technology any further. So what we believe is that assistive technology transfer, working with other partners like local business development like the Maryland TEDCO and others, we can help bridge that valley of death so that technologies don't have to unnecessarily die just because they lack funding. So with that, here's my contact information. Thank you very much.